lumens, depending on turtle season or not, was about 100,000. Which, you know, we'll be submitting a CIP for consideration, you know, whether or not to move forward with doing that, but.
Or those LED lights?
No, it's the same type of light that's there. You know,
We'd
not
have
the
to change the
specifics,
actual
yeah.
fixture to go to the
Yeah.
LED route. There are some LEDs up there that,
Yeah.
when the technology was not advanced enough to get the right color range, when the casino was being built, it was coming out, I think it was too red, it wasn't orange enough. LEDs have improved greatly since then, because this was designed in 2010, so we've got 5 years of improvement and it's exponentially getting better. So there probably is an LED option. There is a Siemens study being done for the city, looking at how the city can save energy with its lighting, and they're proponents of LED.
Yeah, the retrofit we're talking about was done, it would be a sole source retro that was done by the original manufacturer. They had some light, which gives us the ability to basically turn it on and turn it off. You know, different light lumen, you know, depending whether it's turtle season or not. You're going down the road of completely changing out the entire light fixture. That's a whole different cost.
Yeah.
And Juan, you were here when those turtle lights were approved. What was the thought pattern, like you said, turtles up over the dune? What was the thought pattern with lights that are actually down
I
below?
wasn't involved. I don't know.
Okay.
I wasn't
And
involved.
I was prevented from being overly involved, I would now work for the city, but having read the minutes, I think the county had heavy involvement, and the county, surprisingly enough, does not actually review much of the beach for turtle lighting. Palm Beach has its own turtle lighting ordinance, I think Boca does, Manalapan doesn't, so the stretch of the Palm Beach beach that the county actually oversees from a turtle lighting standpoint is rather small. And I feel that they did, because this was going to be a very visible project, they wanted this to be the creme de la creme of turtle lighting friendly lighting. And so it was turtle lighting friendly everywhere. They were paying for it, community respects with the grant money, and so that's how we ended up with the turtle friendly lighting everywhere across the beach.
Tonight you have gotten a lot of emails, people that have been injured. I'm surprised we don't have any lawsuits.
It's
No, I mean,
scary,
that's
it's
the
scary, the
number
working
one.
at night.
I mean, if I had a rank complaint, that is by far, it's just, it's dark. You know, it's really dark, and then with our green space area south of the building, you know, there's a lot that goes on in there, especially on our bonfire nights. But correct me if I'm wrong, William, even if the city passed a city turtle ordinance, it would not allow us to improve the lighting on top of the burner.
Well, what you
Yeah,
can do
just
is
do a
the
lot.
phasing. Right now, we don't have the ability to change that turtle lighting up or down
Right.
based on the season. If we had our own ordinance, we could say that off-season, it can have a higher lumen than it would otherwise, which would help.
Okay, so we're back at the second
We're
issue.
back to finish the recommendation,
Yes.
part two.
Let's talk again about a workshop versus a charrette. In my thought pattern, a workshop, people get up, they get to speak for 2 or 3 minutes, and they're speaking to us. My idea of a charrette is a public meeting down there, where we're all talking amongst ourselves, and we're all, you know, the charrettes I've gone to is, you know, you do a big map of the beach, and people are actually, you got little stickers, and you actually stick what you'd like to see, and you're actually, everyone's on talking and working together. That was my thought pattern for a charrette. And then, because that's kind of like what I like to see versus a workshop, where people talk at us. I'd like to see a charrette where we're actually all working together.
Yeah, no, and I agree. I just think that should happen after we get the information that we need to say, this is what could happen, here's your limits,
Agreed.
this is what can't happen, this is what can happen.
Yeah,
You
just
know.
so there's clarity.
Right. And then the workshop, the reason I was, you know, proposing to keep the workshop is there's just a lot of, I think there's just, from a staff back to commission, you know, there's some policy decisions that I feel like need to be made as far as, you know, the financial state of the beach fund in its entirety. You know, we're now, it looks like we're gonna be delaying, trying to get a tenant. You know, so now we're pushing ourselves out into probably 2017 before we see any kind of rents. You know, even if you know, build out when you consider, you know, the delay of payment there. So there's some policy decisions that I think as the department director, that we need to work out in a workshop.
Okay, that's the clarity I was looking
Parking
for.
rates,
A-
you
a
know,
Beach workshop.
even the pool, something as simple as, you know, our pool is expensive to use because you gotta pay for parking here. You go to Lake Lido, you don't pay for parking. You go to Gaines Park, you don't pay for parking. You know, and there's different ideas, you know, and different things that I think that should be talked about in a workshop format as we go into the budget process for FY16.
Okay, so I know that, you know, meetings are tight between now and the budgets, but I think the second recommendation would be a beach workshop.
Has not a tentative date for the beach workshop that was gonna be possibly following up on this meeting
There was
already
no
been
date,
scheduled?
because we didn't know what this board
There
was
was
gonna
one that
do.
was scheduled for Saturday, but that was on a different.
But I think it's a little different,
Right.
because the Juan's looking for a beach workshop to talk about beach budget.
Right, because what I
Going
didn't
into
wanna
the budget.
do was present in a budget meeting here, like what we normally do, all this information and all these choices for you guys as a commission body to try to make a decision. You know, we just handed you a book that's, you know, 8,000 pages big. You know, I think the beach fund requires, I think it deserves more attention, you know, from the staff back to the commission to create some policy, you know, as far as what are our next steps moving forward.
Well, and maybe, that can be a little latter in our meetings, so the actual new beach committee, that
Right.
financial piece, they will have time
That will
to
help, yeah.
look at some of the budgetary issues
Right.
and bring maybe some of their recommendations to the workshop.
That's a good idea, though. I think that would be a good idea, to allow that group to meet, you know, a couple times.
Because you said that
We have a
they
meeting
met
scheduled.
once.
We met once preliminary, and that's when we came up with the idea, hey, let's put this working group together and, you know, see what we can hatch out.
Okay, so maybe recommendation to staff would be setting that beach budget a little later in the process, and to allow this group to work through some of that.
Yeah, we're gonna meet May 11th, you know, it's just
Okay.
staff level
And
meeting.
that's something that it'll have to be a recommendation, but
Right.
Pam Lopez and staff will have to work out, you know, when this can happen, because I know as we go into the budget, there's gonna be a lot of back-to-back meetings. Are we okay with that?
So,
Are you sure?
well,
Question?
I'm just thinking, you posed a question earlier, what to do with the Anderson and Carr proposal. Do we want to possibly have one more little fact-finding, meeting with Anderson and Carr, since their proposal is, it sort of fits within the original design scheme or idea of what could happen at the beach? Get a response to whatever their new number would be for rent, what considerations they would like us to do in furtherance of, they've already mentioned the turtle lighting, and we are trying to do the ballet and some other things, and see if they are willing to cooperate and work with us moving forward, or we want to let them just sort of hang out there and do the next thing. Whatever that next thing will be.
I think the success of their business is based on parking and based on lighting and based on people coming to their facility for dinner, going upstairs, and for them booking events in the banquet facility. In its current condition, I'm not sure how successful they would be in the hot dog stand things, you know, I'm not sure how.
Those some hot dogs.
Well, that's not something I'd say. I think it has a double-edged sword, as we may or may not be looking at, you know, what impact that would have. You know, I think I would feel more comfortable if their numbers were closer to what we needed. You know, I'm not opposed to
And
going back
I
and,
think our CAM is more like 12,
It's 11 and change.
Yeah.
But I'll pose this question to
on
the
a
group.
good day, it's 11. And you
And
you
there's-
need to increase it.
there
Well,
needs to be
yeah, I mean,
escalation.
once, that's that, but, I mean, just hypothetically speaking, if we were to walk out of here and tomorrow, you know, a Restaurant of America's calls and says, hey, we wanna give you guys $25 a square, $15 cam, 15 patio, what do you want, here's a blank check, what are we gonna tell them? No?
We would give them a first right of refusal,
Right.
which would be the
So-
honorable thing to do.
I mean, we're not gonna say, do we need a traffic study to bring in a restaurant to the vacant space?
But based on the information we have now, I would ask the question, because again, you put, at some point, you know, it's not about the money. Yes, we need a certain amount of money to break even and pay our bills, but at the end of the day, we've now identified issues, parking, you know, ADA, other issues, that by putting someone else in there tomorrow, you know, it might help us financially, but in the long run,
It might backfire.
it's gonna hurt us unless we actually know what we're doing and have something set up.
Will also make the mix of the pot even more murky.
Thanks, Wayne.
This is
That's
I
what we're here
do.
for.
That's what I do. What I've noticed too, at the beach is that, one of the things that was stressed heavily at the charrettes for the redevelopment or reconstruction of the beach casino was having the beach be accessible to everybody. And I don't want us to lose sight of the fact that our median household income in Lake Worth is $35,000, which is almost half of what it is in the county. We have the second highest poverty rate in the county. We have the second highest unemployment rate in the county. And I know that hot dog stands and mobile food vending is not, unless it's controlled very tightly, it can get out of hand. But it does provide an option of food service that's more affordable level to the average Lake Worthian. And I think we need to leave that, not just dismiss it initially.
It's not, I'm not dismissing, it was something that I was potentially looking at as contracting out. I mean,
But again, a
You know.
$3 hot dog is one thing,
Yeah.
a $12 hot dog is something different, you know,
I mean,
a food
I'm-
truck is
I'm
not.
exploring other revenue opportunities, you know, just like our Cabana rental has been successful and, you know, that contract's coming up, you know, to be put back out and, you know, so yeah, I don't disagree with you, you know, it's just time.
Well, and I think that was one of the misperceptions that I heard from people, that we were going to shut down the beach and there would be no beach access, you know, at no time have we ever looked at
No.
anything that would shut down the beach or be on the beach.
Right.
So, you know, as we move forward, you know, we've never looked at, you know, cutting off access to anyone in
Well,
this.
the other component of it as well is, I don't know how this plays into the county's grant requirement, but I know that when the beach was being redeveloped, we had to have a minimum number of spaces available at all times. That's
613.
That's why the beach project was built in phases. That has to be a consideration of whatever happens at the beach, because if we come in and tear up half the parking lot for
Has to be
6 months, that's gonna kill his budget right off the top.
Well, that's why valet doesn't work right now. I can't get around, you know, not to get around, I just, I've engaged the county in discussion, can I have valet? The
What?
county attorneys are not comfortable because of the, at all times available spaces, you know, I'm roping off essentially X number of spots, you know, but we have some other ideas that, you know, we'll be presenting in a couple of weeks, hopefully, on how to provide, you know, something as simple as that valet service.
Well, and just for clarity and public transparency, one of the biggest issues I've had from day one with the complex is the complex does not pay for itself. We rely on parking to pay for the complex, and in a perfect world, parking revenue would be extra.
Right.
And we could pay for the escalations and all the other things that we've identified. But unfortunately, you know, parking has gone up and we're making a lot of money in parking, but it's paying for the actual.
And it's subsidizing, but the casino building plan with full tenants at a market rate works.
Okay.
Just, you know, the plan, you know, the building. You know,
But
the
it-
rents, CAM pays for the cost to maintain the building.
But it didn't take
Right.
in consideration everything
Having
else
3
that
years
we've
of vacant
identified.
space kinda hurts the bottom line. Alright, so we gotta finish our.
And the ballroom
recommendations.
space, we determined that it's not really making any money.
It's not that it's not making money, I mean, it's,
And that's leasable space, or that space that should be, rent should be coming in on.
no, it does.
In addition to-
Ballroom will be pretty close to breaking even, return a profit this fiscal year, and it's operating with one person. It's not like we're actively out selling the ballroom, I don't have physically, we don't have enough bodies to do that. I have one person to coordinate the weddings, put on the weddings, you know, and there's not enough hours for one person to do that. It's miraculous, miraculous. It's a miracle what she's been able to do by herself. So given, you know, a commitment to making that and staffing it, you know, then we probably could make a
But
profit.
staffing it
But I
and
thought we
more people,
determined
more dollars.
from her numbers that taking out, taking what the square footage is, with the current base rent and camp charge that you would charge anyone for, and that number per year, and then the number that we have now, which is from the weddings, but then you have to back off personnel, maintenance personnel, and the person that's taking care of the events, backing their salaries out of that. It was way upside down, I thought, from your numbers. Do you
I
recall?
recall that it was more profitable to lease that space than to do the banquets, because we're not doing all the other services, we're just renting the room. So yes, I do recall, I do not recall the
The
numbers.
cleaning and the
Right, by the end
and
of
the
the day,
tables
it
and the
would be
chairs
more
and moving
profitable
things
to
and
just rent.
set up, tear down,
For sure.
all
And it
these
would be
things are,
easier
it's a
to
losing
rent.
proposition
Well,
right now.
and let's not lose sight, get off track again. The ballroom, it's not a wedding catering hall. We rent an empty space that people use for weddings. We're not in the
Right.
business of renting linens and doing table settings. We're not set up to do that. You know, the original business plan called for one person to run the building and book a calendar. And we were gonna engage caterers to do that for the city. We decided to get into the catering business, but we're really not in the catering business. We rent the room, no different than we rent the Shuffleboard building or the Osborne Center.
And then
That's
people
the
rent
extent of
the,
it.
do they rent the furniture too?
No, like, it comes with tables and chairs, you know,
Comes
then
with
they go
tables.
above and beyond, you know, they start adding the linens and the centerpieces and the DJ and everything else. In a charrette or in a workshop, the commission can say, you know what, let's give it a good effort and, staff it up, support it, with a marketing plan and everything else that comes with it, and try to truly generate a profit, like everyone else seems to think that it should be doing. But we're not staffed that way, so I can't give you apple to apples comparison of what, like Anderson's cars, their second end of the proposal, what they can do, that's what they do.
Well, and you tapped on a point too, in reference to about the pool. I get on a regular basis, people saying, well, if we just promoted, if we just did, by promoting it and marketing it, that's a staff member, that's additional costs that, weren't laid out for the ballroom, that, we would have to make a decision whether we wanted to hire additional staff. With additional hours comes additional lifeguards, so, it's all an additional cost.
This is the very information that I feel like should be talked about in a workshop, do we step out of the towers at 5, or do we give, more lifeguards and cover till 7? Do we do this, do we do that, do we, there's a lot of discussion that needs to be had.
So we have 2 recommendations so far, and we're still back to Anderson and Carr.
I don't think we can ask, say, we can engage Anderson Carr in a meeting and say, can you meet us at a minimum at this level? This level rent, this level cam, are you willing to do property tax, and if you want patio space, are you willing to pay for it? Give us your best and last offer, and be done with it. They're gonna,
If we do that, I think we should look at just the 5,000 square feet,
just to make the space.
just the vacant space. This is what we need.
You guys are agreeing?
I'm in agreement, because if we can get a tenant in there at the rate we need, why wouldn't we?
And they have somebody at the table, so you might as well finish the negotiation.
What do you think, Sherry? You said earlier, we're not sure if it would
Well,
be
if they can,
successful.
but you have to factor in if they're gonna put, how much were they gonna put in? 1.2?
1.2.
But wasn't that for both spaces?
That's for both,
1.8.
for both spaces, but most of it would go.
Wasn't it 1.8 for both spaces, but 1.2 is
For
in
the
the
vacant
1.5,
space.
1.8, though, I think it was like 1.2 for the restaurant space, and then as much as $500,000 possibly in the ballroom space. Because where our ballroom is challenged, and this was a discussion that, came about from the charrettes, but also was a the ballroom is kind of a victim of value engineering. It's not very easily convertible. You can't divide it up into multiple spaces. Its acoustics are not pleasant when it's empty. It's hard to have smaller things there, and I think our ballroom, in the long term, would be a better profit center if it's attached somehow with something else. Either a restaurant, a caterer, or something, because in and of itself, we don't have the means to probably put the resources in to have that space be enhanced to maximize the square foot dollar. We don't even have a good sound system.
We don't have any. sound
Because, and that's part of the reason I think that, that they wanted that space is because, they would be having a kitchen could accommodate both spaces. And they wouldn't have to drag catering trucks in and drag things upstairs, during events. They would have everything on site already.
So let's
From
go
their-
back, sorry, Sherry, go ahead.
From there, if they build out the other space and put their ocean grill in there with the big restaurant, they could cater the events in that location.
So would a recommendation be to go back to Anderson and Cart and give us the two separate offers in like we talked about before? One for the vacant space and break out the ballroom?
I would suggest you offer both spaces to them and have at least both spaces.
Well, I think
So in one lease? or
No, I
two?
think the three options that Christie and I discussed with them last week, is one is a lease arrangement for all of it, one is a lease arrangement for the restaurant space, and then a management arrangement for the ballroom space. And there was another permutation, which I can't remember what it was. I think we leave all of them on the table and ask them for their best and final offer on that. We bring it back to the committee and move it forward with a recommendation of yes, no, or indifference.
But I think as far as, because we've gone back and forth a couple of times, I think we should probably, William, figure out the square footage on everything, the outside and everything, and actually come up with a number. It's one thing to, we know where we need to be on the 5,000 square feet. Where do we need to be on everything else?
Why,
Is that 20, is it 25?
the desired rent, if you remember the business plan, had best worst case scenarios, was based on the city still operating that entire second floor, the can and whatnot. Their proposal is to basically take over the whole second floor. That
Correct.
reduces our can responsibility, which in turn probably is gonna reduce our desired rent to make the plan work.
Okay, but
It could be 15 a square.
Okay, but from the business side, I need to see those numbers. I can't say it may be 15, I need to say it is 15 to make everything work. Because if they're gonna offer us 12 and we need 15, again, we'll be in the same situation. So I really need, the square footage and the numbers broken down before we go back and I'd really rather go back to them and say, if you want the entire floor, we're looking, you can take the entire top floor, but it's 15 plus 10 with an escalation. I need more of a structured number.
I was gonna say, I'm in agreement, because really the ballroom and that restaurant upstairs really need to work together. Because to have us run the ballroom and the restaurant right there, I see, you're gonna have a problem.
But I don't wanna
There's not
sign a
enough
lease
space.
and then, realize we, just like the leases we have now, some of them work, some of them don't work. So I wanna make sure that, as we move forward, that,
I mean, we can just keep getting this more confusing.
One thing you need to know is what market rents are.
Well, here's this, we rent
On
the
the
space
beach.
out tomorrow, they move in.
Market rents in Del Rey on Atlantic Avenue are $80 a square foot plus can. In Boca, it's $60 a square foot plus can for retail.
well, and we've identified, we have something unique, we have something that,
Where do we put staff?
well, if they take the entire top floor, you don't need to put staff. What staff do you need?
No, we still have staff to run the property, we still got,
We're still
parking,
managing
the whole
property.
parking division's up there.
Why is the parking division?
Because
They're enforced.
That's
by
we're
law.
getting a modular.
I know, but they're in the parking
And
lot, they're
there's
not,
another $200,000 expense to
They're
put
not-
out a modular office on the property.
okay, but they're not.
Where are they gonna store the tables and chairs and all the custodial stuff? I mean, it's.
Well, the tables and chairs, again, the tables and chairs go with,
Where are they gonna put it? They're gonna have a restaurant.
well,
One
that's
side.
part of their build out. You know, if they're gonna have a restaurant, they're 5,000 square feet, they do what we should have done from day one, is put some kind of
Closet.
closet in there that actually houses that stuff, but we didn't do that. So, you know, at that point, that becomes their responsibility. But I think we need some kind of a number. We can't just, you know, ask them to
Well, based
give
on,
us
I
that.
can run numbers along.
and you can get help from, do you have anybody that, your social work staff?
And she's going in the budget.
William, we will help you.
Something wrong. I don't get involved in this budget except to like point out things that I think we should be paying for, which we can't afford.
I'm an extensive real estate background over here.
Mhm.
Well, one thing, maybe a suggestion, what about a recommendation to the city commission that they consider moving forward with Anderson Carr? That will put the issue really in the hands of the final decision maker, because I think you guys have discussed some policy issues of, do we want the vacant space and the restaurant working together? Does the city want to still maintain the ballroom? Some of those policy issues, can't be answered at this level. So if the evaluation committee feels that Anderson Carr has a viable option that you want to see some more questions answered on, perhaps recommend to the city commission, move forward with this proposal, and then it ultimately is up to the city commission how they move forward or they don't move forward. In talking about the other studies y'all want to have done, perhaps one thing is to tell Anderson Carr, we like the proposal, we got to get some more studies done, and until that happens, we're not going to move forward with anything, but we want to keep you as an option. So maybe the recommendation to the city commission is go forward with Anderson Carr, and there's different ways to do it. You can consider negotiation now, you can get some studies, keep them as a viable option, or make some policy decisions. But I think we could just keep discussing
Agreed.
their proposal.
And I hear what you're saying. Where I have a question would be that, regardless of what we put on the second floor, Anderson and Carr, another person offering us some amount of money to go in there, or some other group, and they go in, the city is going to have to entertain some expense to get things to the point where we maximize the rent. And that might not be included in that study I've talked about. It's things we've already identified. We have a lighting issue, we have an ADA issue, we have a valley issue. We already know all that. And so I like that your avenue of thought of putting it in the hands of the city commission with parameters on where we still have questions, and see what the best and final offer is. And while they're doing that, and because if we came to an agreement that we all liked, and Anderson and Carr liked, that doesn't mean the city commission's gonna want it.
Correct.
They're gonna wanna play in sandbox with the negotiations no matter what we do. No offense, Andy.